What's up guys, and welcome to a really exciting tutorial. Today I'm going to show you After Effects. So probably you have never opened up After Effects before, or you might have opened it a couple of times and you feel like, man, there are a lot of buttons, windows, and I have no idea what to do. And don't worry, that's exactly how I felt. I think it's 4 years ago. So I've been doing After Effects now for 3 or 4 years, something around that. At the beginning, I just didn't want to switch from Premiere Pro to After Effects because I was so scared of the new interface and new actions and new buttons, and just the whole workflow seemed a little bit difficult and different to me. So I sticked for a long time to Premiere Pro. But as soon as you're passionate about some effects, about some videos you want to create, believe me, that's the perfect video to start with. And today's video is to just show you After Effects, give you like an introduction to the different windows and buttons you can click, and just give you kind of feeling and coordination inside of this program. And don't worry, just get started. And as soon as you work more and more with the program, you will understand it for sure. So this video is just an introduction, introduce you to the windows, to the effects, and how you can start. So you should definitely watch this video, and then you can jump into the editing videos. And yeah, you will see by watching me actually doing the steps and all the different workflows, you will integrate this into your workflow, and you will learn way faster than me because you can watch my workflows. I wish like 3 years ago I had these videos I'm creating right now for you, because I give you in-depth details. I take you with me on my journey, how I create. And I think these videos see me failing and trying different things. That's exactly how you learn the fastest way. So let's jump right into After Effects. So I just open up After Effects here, and that's the first window you're going to see. In here is that little pop-up window. You can do different actions here. It's quite similar to Premiere Pro. First of all, you can create a new project here. You can open a project. So usually I start a new project here, or if I want to open up an existing project, like for example, the last 3D camera MGK video I worked on, I'll just click on here and you see the latest projects you've worked on. Usually I just open up a new project and boom, here we are. The first step is always I'm going to save the project. So there are basically two ways to save the project. Either you go up here to File, Save As, and then Save As Project, and then you can direct to your folder where you want to save your project. The other way is really you have to learn to work with keyboard shortcuts. Believe me, this is game changing. You just press Command, Shift, and S, and you can directly direct to your folder and save your project. Click here and save, and all good. So talking about keyboard shortcuts, here in After Effects, it's even more important than working with shortcuts in Premiere Pro. So make sure you download the keyboard shortcuts. So first of all, I'm going to show you the windows in here, and then we are going to talk about the keyboard shortcuts later on. First of all, I want you to understand the basic here, the different windows. So we are starting here in the project panel. Here we can import our footage with Command I. I just imported, and here let's say I want to import that cool clip which I created here, this animation. So if you double click on it, it's going to open preview window. It's quite similar to the preview window in Premiere Pro. Here you can pretty much just set also your in and out points for the clip, and now you can just drag it here at the bottom. And now we have created a sequence. In After Effects, it's called a composition with the same settings as your clip. So if we have the clip here selected, up here to the top, we can see the informations like the pixel here, also the frame rate, and some more information about our clip. And these are now applied to our composition. Here in the composition, it's the same length as we are decided it to be here in the reference window. So we just dragged it in. It's the same length, sticking here to the window. Yeah, you can create folders. So let's say we want to create a composition folder. You will see me creating a lot of folders in the next videos because here in After Effects, it's so important to keep it everything structured, and folder are super important to keep the structure here, because you're gonna have a lot of layers. If you are building complex effects, you are going to have a lot of layers. That's for sure. Really important button, create the new folder here. Next up here, you can create a new composition, set your composition name. You can choose between different presets or just put in your own pixels and ratios. You can lock the ratio. I would always stick with square pixels here. You can choose the frame rate, the duration, and everything else, the background color, and then create different comps. You can also set here in the advanced settings the shutter angle, because we can automatically activate motion blur here in After Effects, which is super cool. So if you animate something, if you change the transformation, for example, it's going to automatically apply motion blur when you check that motion blur icon on the layer and in the comp. And by default, it's set to 180 degrees shutter, which I'm working with. But if you want to have less motion blur, make sure you set this to 90 or something like that. And you can also choose between different render settings here. I would stick to classic for now. You can for sure use the advanced 3D render and Cinema 4D, which makes it easier to drag in 3D elements just right into After Effects without any third-party plugin. And you have some more options for the transformation, but this we're going to cover in another video. So for now, we can leave that at classic. So that's how you create another comp. So that's a comp we have just created. Another way to create a comp is we can drag that clip here, or any clip or a solid here on that icon, boom, and it's going to create a comp with exact the same length and frame rate and size. So this is also pretty helpful. I'm using that a lot. Here you can open up your project settings, which can be really helpful if you want to change your use of video rendering and effects. I would leave it on your default right now. You have different time code settings, color settings. You can also increase the channels here, which going to make your graphics, your shape you're going to create more detailed and high resolution, but I'm sticking with 8 for now. This is fine for me. You can also change the channel here in a quick access, so right next to it. And yes, you have audio and expressions. This one is just that you've seen it. We can leave it. So that's it about this little window here. This is our project manager. That's where our footage sits. You can also change the size of your windows completely free, same as Premiere Pro, which is super nice. And if it doesn't look like my screen now, if you don't see things, and you're like, man, you're talking about a window, I don't see it. So make sure you go up to Windows, Workspace, and reset all panels to save layout. And if you have a different panel, like maybe you are in Learn right now because you just open up After Effects, just go up to Windows, Workspace, and set it to all panels, and it should look exactly like it does here in my case. Moving on to the next one, which is our main timeline window. And here we are going to spend a lot of time. So here we can drag all the layers in and create different stuff. We have a lot of cool buttons here, which I'm going to show you now. First of all, we can start here with these two buttons. Here you can activate and deactivate a layer. So you can make it visible or not visible. Same with the audio. You can turn off the audio or turn it on. In a case you have a lot of layers, let's say we have a green layer, also a red layer, and let's change their size. And now you can see all of them, right? And if we want to solo one layer, so one way would be to turn off the other layers, just because we just want to see that layer right now. Sometimes you just want to see that one layer to make the edit, which can also be a big game changer. If you have a huge edit, you just want to make changes to one specific layer, and you don't need to play back your whole graphics you have created. You could just use this button here. So let's say we have all of them activated, and this is a case of having like 40 layers, and you're just clicking on that button here, and it's going to solo that layer. So you don't have to turn 39 layers off like that. No, it's just one button. This one, you can solo that layer. Really important to know that. Next up, here is the lock, so you can just lock the layer so you cannot change anything. So if you have, for example, created a layer, adjustment layer with a color or something, you can just lock that layer and you don't have to worry. You can still use Command A and it's just going to use the layer. They are not locked. Yes, really important. Then you have different blending modes. Same with Premiere Pro. Imagine we have two clips in here, or we have something else. Let's say we want to blend these two clips together. Let's move this one a little bit more further. Blending modes. You can change right here, let's say exclusion or like a difference or something. So right here at the bottom, for like a quick access, you can access the blending mode, which is slightly different to Premiere Pro. Because in Premiere Pro, you have to go to the effects controls window. We can open here the transform option, and here we have all the settings like anchor point, position, scale, and yeah, rotation, opacity, which is pretty cool because when you can just quick access it here. And here we are at the main point why you need shortcuts. So pressing S, for example, right away brings a shortcut for scale. So just in a second, you can access the scale. Whole different in Premiere Pro, you have to find the layer, you go up to effects control, you change the scale. So this takes a lot of time. Here, you just choose the layer, you're always working in here, just press S, bring up the layer, and now here you can create a keyframe on that stopwatch. Let's say want it to be that size, and at the end want to scale it up, boom, and like that we have created a cool keyframe, you know? So that's pretty fast. Same goes on with P for position. You can do exactly the same, changing everything, bringing S up for scale again, making a keyframe and scaling it up and down again. And then there's another cool thing. If you want to see all the keyframes you have created, you just have to press U and it brings all the parameter you have keyframed. And this is really important to know and to understand, because like that you can just quick access all the transform options, also the anchor point, the rotation, opacity with T, for example. So make sure you read that paper I gave you where it names all the keyframes, all the keyboard shortcuts, because these are really important here in After Effects. Yes, so you have to understand the different modes here and how we change the blending modes. That is perfect. Let's move on to the next one. Next one, which we're going to talk, is the select matte. This one is really important because I use this one a lot. Let's say we have that window here. We can just scale this one down a second and let's create a shape. Let's say we create a rectangle shape and let's draw a rectangle shape like that. Have no layer selected and we have a shape. So this is a shape layer we've created. And if we use that track matte option, we can just use that shape as a track matte. Whatever area we have that shape is going to be affected as a mask, which can be super helpful to slide stuff in and out. Yeah, super easy to mask and yeah, use as a track matte. You can also invert that track mask, so it's going to be the outside. So there's a lot you can do, which is pretty amazing. Yes, so let's set it to none, delete that layer again. And you can also here with that tool, you can parent to other layers. So let's say we have created a null object. You can also just right click here into that panel and create a new object, for example, a null object. And we have created a null object, which is pretty much just a layer, which is not visible, cannot see it, but you can add information. So for example here, so I've just added this slide here. You can see it's sliding on the null object, but you cannot see anything on the null object. So I can now parent it with that button here to the null object. And you can see here in the drop down menu, you can also use that one to parent it, pretty much just showing it where is it linked to. And now you see it's moving. So whenever I'm animating the null object here, I'm not animating the red solid right now. I'm only animating the null object and it's moving. And this can be pretty helpful to link stuff to trackers, for example, to tracking data, because here in After Effects, we can track movement. For example, my hand, I can track my hand and copy and paste the tracking data of the tracker in After Effects to a null object. And this tracking data is stored at the null object here in that case, for example, in form of keyframes. And then you can just parent text or layers or screens to that null object, and they're going to follow that because you're parenting it and telling the layer you're parenting to the null object, hey, follow these instructions and keyframes of the layer. So this is really helpful, and you can still animate your actual layer whatever you want. You can like you have completely freedom, but it's parented to that object. So let's see, you can parent it to that null object but still change the position and animate even the position of the solid. But you're gonna understand this in further videos, how we can make use of that. Let's go further here with the right click on new. You can also create text. You can just start writing text. The faster way is just to press Command T and you can create a text. And you can now either create it vertical or horizontal. You can change this up here as well. Creating text is pretty important. So if you want to create vertical text, it's just Shift T. If you want to create horizontal, it's Command Shift T. And there we go, text. Nice. And the next thing is creating a solid, which can be really important. Here we can now name that solid. We can give them the size. Usually it's set to the size of your comp, which is really helpful. Here you can also change the color and it's pretty much just going to be a plain solid. We're going to use solids a lot. Faster way to create a solid, by the way, Command Y and boom, you're right away creating a solid. You see, it's so much faster. The workflow is going to be so quick if you use shortcuts. Next up, we can create a camera. Cameras we are going to use a lot for 3D work in general. So we can animate actually a 3D camera, which is really cool. What we are going to learn. And next up, we can create a shape layer. So this is going to be a rectangle tool, like a rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, or star. You can also use a shortcut Q here, which is going to create a shape layer as well. Next up, we can create a adjustment layer, which is also really cool and important. On adjustment layer, you can, for example, search for the effect Lumetri color and just apply it to the effect controls. You can either go through your effects control up here or just edit it down here. So let's say we want to add some more saturation to that, something like this. And yeah, that can be stored on an adjustment layer. It's the same like in Premiere Pro. So you have just an adjustment layer where you can store like different effects and do different stuff with. Next up, we can create a content aware fill layer, which brings up this area here, but we need to draw a selection first, which we can actually content aware fill. Content aware fill fills that area we are selecting with the data around it. So we are going to use this in further tutorials as well. For the logo flip, for example, this can be really helpful. And next up, of course, you can create some Photoshop file. So it's going to open up Photoshop and yes, you can create a Photoshop file right in here. So now we can right click it and we have a lot of options here. For example, like creating a new mask. We can now then go into the mask and shape path and have here a couple of options, but I'm not really using them. You can set the quality. You have the transform options. This one can actually be pretty helpful. So if you have scaled down your clip or you're importing a clip with a different frame size to your comp, you can just like right click it, go to transform and fit to comp. And that can be really helpful. So you don't have to tweak like your scale and stuff. You can also go through your markers, your blending modes, but you see your blending modes here, right? All the different effects, but we will rather go to the effect panel. Then you also have your keyframe options. You can also reveal your clip like in the source project in your finder. Next up is camera, but I'm not using this one a lot here. Pre-composing, and pre-composing is super important. You can pre-compose single layer or multiple layer. Like let's say we have this layer here and we want to pre-compose them. And pre-composing is pretty much creating a new composition, like a pre-composition. And there we have two options. If we are just pre-composing one layer, you will see the other option is available as well. And it's pretty much creating a new composition and putting everything together in one new container, in one new composition. I'm usually moving all attributes into the new composition. Here it says use this option to place the currently selected layers together into a new intermediate composition. And that's usually what we want to do. Like we want to put everything together into a new comp and still have only this new comp in our existing main comp. Leaving all attributes would mean use this option to create a new intermediate composition with only file name in it. The new composition will become source to the current layer. This basically means that you still can affect this clip in here, but you will understand this later on. It's just really important that you know you have that option. And I'm usually moving everything, especially if you have more than one clip. What I usually have is like I'm pre-composing them and I always click to adjust composition duration to the time span of the selected layer, which means if we have that layer's length is going to be something like that, and we pre-compose everything and we have that not checked, and it's going to make the length of your composition, like the big composition you have in here we are working in. Usually I just want that to trim as well, so I adjust the composition duration to the time span of the selected layer. Here we go. Now it's same length as our layers is, because this helps me a lot to see how long my length of the clip of the shape layer I have inside the comp is. This is a really important button here here, which I press a lot. Then you can also invert your selection, select children and rename. Rename is also, there's a faster way. You just have to press enter and you can rename your clip. Easy as that. Same way up here in the project window, you can just enter and rename them to anything you want. Pretty easy. And next up, we have that cool buttons up here. Since we have created a new pre-comp, the button here can help to hover between your comps. So you can just use this one to jump fast between comps. So you don't have to imagine we have that one closed. We just click here and just move to that comp. So if you click tab, you can pretty much just jump between those clips, those comps, and especially if you have more comps, like this is saving a lot of time. You can also activate enable frame blending for all layers. And here, that is a really magical button. This is enabling motion blur. Let's say we create a position keyframe, bringing up P with position. And at the beginning of that clip, this clip, I want to be out somewhere here. So now this one is moving in like that, and I want to have motion blur. So usually you have to keyframe motion blur, but now by activating here the motion blur on the comp, which brings us actually to this button, toggle and switches modes. Here we actually have two different options. Here you see the blending mode and the track matte and the parenting and the link. And when you click on that, you won't see the track matte here, but you have some more options like making it a 3D layer, which is pretty cool because we can move it now in 3D space. Now it's important to know that here you can activate motion blur, and here you can see now it's also enabled in the comp. Here we see motion blur just by pressing that one button. We have created natural motion blur related to the amount you have set, creating the comp, which I showed you earlier. This can be really, really cool and helpful. Here is a really magical button. This is the 3D object button. And now you see we have different options here for the position. We just got a new axis. So this is pretty much the Z axis. And we are now able to change not only position here, but making it a 3D object. We have more options, like we have that rotation going on. We actually just made this a 3D object, which is pretty cool, which will work a lot, especially if you create a 3D camera, which you know you can do here, a 3D camera. And making objects a 3D object, it will follow and stay at the same position of that 3D camera in 3D space. And also if you are 3D tracking a clip, you can place elements in 3D space by making them a 3D layer. So they're going to be affected by that 3D track and they're going to stay at the same place, which is super cool and which we are going to do a lot in the tutorial. So this is really important to know that you can change it here to a 3D layer. Nice. And now we have some keyframes, but you can see it's coming in, but it's not really cool, right? It's not like a super smooth keyframe. Let's copy these keyframes and paste it onto here. Yes, so we have a bit more footage to play with. So you can see it's a linear keyframe. It's not something really special and cool. Let's activate motion blur. That looks way better for sure, but still not a super smooth keyframe. And we are going to create super smooth keyframes here in After Effects. This is so much fun. I love to like smooth the keyframes. It is so much cooler and better, I think. Let's duplicate that layer. With Command D, you can just duplicate it, and let's turn off the bottom layer and bring up the keyframes with U here. And now if we have the keyframe selected, we can click on that button here, which says Graph Editor. And here we see now it's a linear keyframe. It's like boom, going all the way up and all the way down. And you can change actually the view here. Probably your view is set to edit value graph. So if it looks like that, sure, you can edit with the value graph, but I love to edit with the speed graph. So let's make sure you open up the speed graph. And now here you can click on that little yellow little circle here, and you can smooth these keyframes here going up and down. So now creating this ramp, we have created a smooth keyframe. So it's coming in slowly, going really fast up in the speed and slowly coming in. If we move the keyframes further aside, something like that. You can see how smooth it comes in, like boom, like that's smooth. So now let's compare this to the keyframe we have created before. Set it to the same length. So this would look something like that, which is okay, which is cool. But look at that. If we're activating that layer again, like that's smooth, right? Boom. Yes, I really like that. So, and you are going to work a lot with that speed graph. This is so much fun. This is so cool to smooth the curves here. Another way you can smooth the curves is by right clicking, keyframe assist and easy ease. Boom. So what we've done now is you see we have smoothed the keyframe. So if we are easy ease that keyframe as well. Nice. We have already created a way smoother result than we had before. So that's what we did. Boom, also pretty smooth. Working with the speed graph editor is really important, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's really nice. I like that. So by now you should know the most important button and switches here. If you don't see the option, by the way, to toggle and switch modes, you can right click here and go to columns. And here you can make sure that you have modes selected. So maybe you don't see it here. So make sure you right click, go to columns and check modes. You can also customize your columns here. Make sure you have all the same settings I have, or if you need some other settings, feel free to add them here. One more thing, here we can like go into the comp, make the comp bigger and smaller. Yes, cool. I think we have talked a lot about the timeline window. This is one of the most important ones. That's why it's worth spending so much time. Let's move on to the preview. This one is not so much. So pretty much the most important thing here is you can freely move with your mouse pad, which is pretty cool, by pressing spacebar. Of course, pressing spacebar is going to play the clip, but if you hold spacebar, you can see the cursor changed to the hand. With the hand tool, you can freely move, and it's super cool to zoom in with the mouse pad and zoom out. And like, this is a really fast way to move here in that preview window. If you moved somewhere and you can't find your window again, you can just go here and yes, choose fit, and it's going to make your comp fit to the preview window. Of course, you can also zoom in here manually, which can be helpful, but I prefer using the mousepad. I think it's way faster. Next up, you can just set the resolution of the playback. So full is obviously showing the full quality. I usually play around with half or third, depending on how complex my composition is, how many layers I have, and what kind of effects I'm using. Here the button is also pretty cool and important. You can toggle transparency grid. So if we are deleting that red solid, for example, this area is black, but in reality it's transparent. So everything we move or we place at this area is going to be seen. So this can also be really helpful to toggle this on and to see where your layer is transparent, where your comp is transparent. All right, so you know what is this button for, the toggle transparency. Perfect. All right, next up we have the region of interest button. I don't really use that one. Here, this is pretty important. Toggle mask and shape path visibility. When I choose my mask tool here up to the top, the pen tool, I can draw a mask and now I'm seeing the path. But if you toggle this one, you won't see the path, which can be helpful sometimes if you are getting distracted by the path. But maybe you're wondering why you don't see your path of your mask. So just make sure you have this toggled on. Yes, awesome. And these two buttons, like the region of interest and choose grid and guidelines, I don't really use. Well, the guidelines and the grid can be really helpful. So that's the grid and that's the guides. Let's turn off the grid. Let's turn off the guides. Here we also have here the rulers, which can be pretty helpful because now you can drag in rulers and, for example, make your target point here right in the middle with the rulers. And now you could track a shot and yeah, make sure everything is centered and always at the same point. And yes, so you can just turn them on and off here. using this toggle grid. Now you can also turn on the safety lines. So if you're editing for short form content, for example, or any other content, you have that safe spot so you don't put important parts too close to the edges, which could be cut off when you upload your video. Another thing is here that take snapshot. You're pretty much taking a snapshot. So this is pretty much just a screenshot. Cool. So that's the composition window, like the window here we are working in. One more thing. It could happen that you have a couple of windows opened here. So for example, now I have two windows here, and sometimes you're in your main comp and you're searching for the layer you were working on. For example, the selection layer. When you did your selection here, make sure you choose the right tab here at the top so you can see actually what you're working on. For example, when also going for the rotoscope, it's going to open up another tab. And here I can now select and cut out my talent, for example. To see what's actually happening in the main comp, I need to switch back to that composition pre-comp 1 preview. Otherwise, I'm in that working area, which I selected for the effect. So make sure you are in the right tab so you see what you're actually doing.